come will be of great interest for the future in this tape. So I'm glad if you're taking pictures of who is here.
Say something to Phil and Dora.
Yes, hello, Phil and Dora. They got 2 putts in the hole already. There he is behind you.
I'm going to join. Who knows, there might be a meal there.
There might be a meal. Very nice you could make it tonight, Dr. Quanbeck.
Thank you. I just kind of stumbled onto this, and there were a lot of people, and I just came.
One of the things I know are all your friends, so you might as well come.
One of the things I remember about Phil.
I want to get in the picture. Yes, yes. There you go. Good.
Rick, what are you going to say?
One of the things I remember about Phil is that you could always tell that when there was a party, because Phil would show up with a coffee cup.
Yes, she was in town, so we had to bring her along. Oh, great. Well, in between us, you're going to have a little. The one with the glass in his hand is the picture.
Yeah, right.
Which one? The one with the glass in his hand is the picture. Steve. You're going to take a picture, you take a picture.
Hi, Dean.
How are you?
Mr. Augsburg. Is this your celebration?
I'll tell you, some people...
Well, you can put that upstairs, maybe. Hi, David. How are you? Good to see you.
Oh, Dave,
There's a place. Hi.
I'll give you that right now.
Very nice, Jenna. You're going to be here? Great.
Turn that off.
The highway.
Yes, I know.
Translate that out of the...
Context, well, look who's here. It looks like Dave. And the contact had been made with the church. Somebody had called the church and said that you were...
We're a little leaven in the world.
You found your camera, Dave.
Oh, hi, Dave. How you doing?
This is for Phil. Say hi to Phil.
This is for Phil. Oh, yes. Hi, Phil.
My son.
Sad Riper. Watch it now, Dave. You're still walking around?
Sorry, I tripped.
I figured that you were getting to be that age now that you'd be sitting down more.
I try real hard. I'm looking for a spot right now.
So that's when he always has it.
Oh, that's cool.
I guess he started running.
You want to preview your speech, John?
Wanting to do that.
We're in store for this tonight by John Benson.
Inside.
I bet you do a lot of speaking and writing. No, I was down in Georgia.
My dad, I could never get an interview with my dad.
You want to illustrate? And now, on the 18th green, Phil Thompson. Oh! Collective crowd noise. Oh! Yes. Better. Go to the left.
Oh, yeah. Yes, in fact, I was out yesterday. It was madness. It was wet. You want to try this?
No, we're not golf people.
That cake was delicious last time.
Well, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
It was just beautiful. And then
Do you have a quarter? Oh, that's great.
Hi, Irene.
Have you seen Millie? Have you seen Millie?
We were just kind of looking for her.
I wonder if she's upstairs. Hi, Bill. Congratulations, Bill. Congratulations, Bill. Hi.
A thousand. Tom, are you going to say anything to your dad on the film here?
Oh, I probably better not say it here. There wouldn't be enough time.
not over.
I'd like to welcome you all to this party, and we will begin by asking the college pastor, David Bowl, to lead the invocation.
When I talked to Phil on Friday, I said at the rate the reservations are coming in, I think we need to rent the Metrodome. And I think we're just about reaching down there when I look as far away as where people are seated. It verifies the fact that the students have observed that Phil Quanbeck can collect a crowd. One day when somebody asked, one of the students asked who was speaking in chapel, I said, Phil Quanbeck. And this person said, hallelujah, he said. I would come to hear Phil Quanbeck read the phone book. It's very difficult to find an invocation for a time like this in the occasional service book, the little green book. And look under the categories, there's a bunch of things. I was getting hot when it said anniversary of an ordination. Then it said Thanksgiving at the retirement. And I read, how about debt? And I don't think that's let's pray. O God of love, in Jesus Christ, you washed the feet of your disciples as a sign of servanthood. Tonight we recognize your servants, Phil and Dora, who have humbly given their lives for so many. We gather as family and friends of these people we love, and we thank you for the gifts that Phil and Dora have given to us. Allow those of us who have received their graciousness and love to give of ourselves in this same spirit. Now we ask that you strengthen us with this food and with the power of this gathering, in your name. And let us sing together, be present at your table, Lord, with service as the ending line. Be present at our table, Lord. Be here and everywhere, our Lord. These mercies bless and grant that we may strengthen forth our service be. Tables follow the direction of the various people over here, Shar and Lisa, and Millie and Gordy. Following them, we will ask you to turn to them for your directions.
We're assuming many of you would like to go to that also, so I think we will begin. I'd like to welcome you all here. And before we get to the main business of the evening, I'd also like to thank the committee that's been working on this. They include Shar Howard, Brad Holt, Lynn Lawrenson, Millie Nelson, Gordon Olson, Dan Pearson, Dave Wold, and Lisa Thurer. We'll not ask them to stand. We'll have other people standing in just a moment. This is, I think, a marvelous occasion to recognize what our colleague and his wife and his family have been doing on behalf of the school and the church for many years. And I would like to introduce the members of the immediate family. Phil and Dora have 4 children, now grown, and 7 grandchildren. And I'll read their names. I'd like them to stand and stay standing, and we'll recognize them all at once. Phil and Randy Quanbeck, Kirsten, Rebecca, and Maren live at Annandale. Thomas and Deborah Quanbeck, their children, Amy and Zachary. Deborah is on a meeting, en route to a meeting in North Carolina, I've been told. Thomas and Julie Erdman. And Mary Tonsager and her children, Sarah and Kate. Okay. ceremonies, but I take MC to really mean director of movement. And it is necessary to keep things going, mainly in deference to our guest of honor. Older people like to be in bed early. Actually, I do feel that Phil is altogether too young to retire. According to the notes I have, he'll be 66 in September. I'm bothered by the fact because I'm 63. I'm concerned about a ripple effect, which is inevitable. I'm sure, Phil, that your action is going to set some of the faculty to examining their more fervently than before the prospects of a change in at least one administrative position. MCs are supposed to tell jokes, but these people decided quite appropriately on a golfing theme. I hope you noticed the tournament here. It's Phil Thompson did that, and it's most appropriate. Come up if you can't see it from where you are. This is appropriate because Phil's modest athletic abilities, which still exceed those of most of his friends, including me, the attention shifts in the spring. In fact, the snow isn't even gone before we suffer a casualty in our regular handball group. We meet after chapel, and the common question is, are you going over today? And within several weeks now, Phil says, I think I have an appointment. Now, the golfing business by itself is difficult because golf jokes about old players themselves are so old as to be known to everyone. And there's no point in telling him. In fact, the funniest thing about Phil is his handball game. It is impossible to describe. You'd have to see it to believe it. And I checked with the committee, and they were not about to video a game for your benefit. So we're really going to get down to business and have what I think is a marvelous program. It's laid out there in front of you. Some basic information to set the context for comments that others will make. Phil has been a teacher at Augsburg for 36 years. And at the outset, he was also the campus pastor. He spent 6 years as a student at Augsburg College and Seminary, so that's a total of 42, and it's remarkable. He is a published writer. He has also done advanced study at Princeton Theological Seminary, where he's received his doctoral degree, additional study at Cambridge University in England, and Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. That, I think, is enough for context. One thing I did note, I have all of these annual reports that teachers fill in for the dean's office. This one, the question, date of tenure, and he's typed in uncertain. And if I'd only known that that was not as certain as I thought it was, our relationship would have been different for the last 12 or 13 years. Phil and Dora have chosen a number of hymns that are their favorites, and as we go through the program, we're going to take a moment to sing some of these. The texts that were read at our parish this morning indicate that this is Good Shepherd Sunday, and it's very appropriate to begin then with The King of Love My Shepherd Is. We'll stand, please.
Just the women on the second stanza. let's sing in harmony the fourth stanza. In this dark vale I hear no ill, where thee, dear Lord, beside me, my brother's wrath, my comfort still, my cross let's sing the last stanza a cappella in harmony. And so through all thy length of days, thy goodness faileth never. Good Shepherd, may I sing thy praise within thy house forever.
Thank you. Be seated. We have a graduate of the class of 1989, a religion major, who is studying at Luther Northwestern Theological Seminary and also now working at the seminary bookstore, who will begin the program with a tribute to Roberta Shaw. Roberta's here.
What a wonderful hymn to start with. Greetings to you, family, colleagues, students, and friends of Dr. Quanbeck. I am honored to be asked to say a few words tonight about a man whom we all highly respect. 22 years ago, I dropped out of college after my junior year at Augsburg. 4 years ago, when I decided to complete my degree, Dr. Quanbeck was one of the reasons that I chose to return to Augsburg and to complete a major in religion. I was not disappointed with my choice. Over the past couple of weeks, two seemingly unrelated strands of thought were playing in my mind. One strand was, of course, what I would say about Dr. Quanbeck this evening. The other was a repeated playback of Jesus' words in John 10:10. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Just a couple of days ago, I realized that these two strands of thought are closely interwoven. Jesus brought abundant life to people by respectfully listening to them, healing and forgiving them, partying and crying with them, and teaching them. All the while, he taught his disciples to do the same for each other, to be sharers of the abundant life. Dr. Quanbeck is one of those sharers of abundant life. He listens respectfully, even to granddaughters who come in the middle of speeches. He listened respectfully to me as I sat in his office, tentatively airing the questions that were just the beginning of a major spiritual struggle within me. He didn't condemn me for questioning, even when I questioned God. He listened, he respected my questions, my mental capability, and my experience of God. He shared abundance with me in those sacred moments. I am sure that there are many students over the years who experienced similar moments of care and hope and abundance in his office. Dr. Quanbeck teaches with freshness and enthusiasm. I snooped through his book collection several times, especially when you were on your medical leave 4 years ago. There I found not only the classics of the Western Christian tradition, but also books that present new ways of doing theology, of interpreting God's active word, and of interpreting the world around us. This is a gift to your students, Dr. Quanbeck. You continue to learn, thus you are not bored, and you can go into the classroom year after year with enthusiasm. Students notice that kind of thing. They want and deserve class experiences which are abundant, not stale. Dr. Quanbeck notices and cares about the individual student. 4 years ago, he taught the language of the Bible during the January interim. It was a large class, 30 or 40 of us, but day after day, Dr. Quanbeck would be sure to use the names of students when calling on them in class. If he couldn't remember a student's name on the 3rd or 4th day, he asked. What a wonderful gift to us. Each of us knew we were important to him and to the class. In that class, there was a wide range of levels of knowledge of the Bible. Dr. Quanbeck was a master at challenging the students who already knew the Bible well, while not patronizing or talking down to those who were less familiar with it. He respected and honored everyone's questions and comments. When we presented our projects, his critique was constructive and respectful. Dr. Quanbeck, thank you for being an agent of the abundant life for many, many, many students over the years. You have helped to empower all of us to go to our niches in the world, equipped with both heart knowledge and head knowledge, to carry on as agents of abundant life. We wish for you a continued joy of learning, the enjoyment of pleasant memories of your Augsburg days, strength to live with any painful memories that might be there, appreciation and satisfaction of a job well done, plenty to do to keep your life interesting, and plenty of quiet time to just be, to soak in the abundance of life which Jesus gives to you through God's other agents of abundant life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a graduate of the class of 1990. She majored in elementary education. She not only graduated, she is teaching 3rd grade at St. Raphael's School in Crystal. Another tribute by Jan Schultz. Jan, here.
For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the sons of men to be busy with. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Also, that it is God's gift to man that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. And so I feel that it is good for us to be here today, to eat and drink and to rejoice in the toil of Dr. Quanbeck over the years. I'm very privileged to be here. When Dave Wolf called me and asked me, I said yes immediately. I would love to come and give a tribute to Dr. Quanbeck, who affected my life so much. You have a wonderful community here, and I'm grateful that you invited me here. Your singing is beautiful. I was so impressed by that. As a Catholic, we have two things we don't do very well. We don't like to sit up front, and we don't like to sing. So I was just in awe. You do wonderful, and harmony is not a word we know very well either. It's true. Let me start by telling you how I came to be here. A few months ago, we had the celebration of the 10th anniversary of Weekend College, which I attended. Back in 1986, I was just finishing up at North Hennepin Community College and looking for a four-year university to finish my education degree. But I had children at home, 3 of them, and work obligations, and I didn't know exactly how I was going to go about getting this degree in education that I really wanted. But I feel God opened up a window for me and sent me here to Augsburg, to this Lutheran college, to get my education degree. It was back in about 1986, I think, and I signed up for biblical studies my first trimester here. And when I walked into that class, I met a gray-haired instructor, a very gentle man with a good sense of humor. He told us that we were going to read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations in one trimester. And that was pretty funny. And this is the actual Bible, and I almost read all of it, I have to say. I did skip part of Deuteronomy, it got kind of boring. I also found out that he was a very open-minded person. He told us right from the beginning that if we did not necessarily agree with him, that was okay. We were entitled to our own opinions, that if we wanted to be wrong, that was up to us. So as a Catholic at a Lutheran college, I found that refreshing. But that turned out to be pretty funny too, because this man was one of the most respectful teachers that I have ever had. I could go on about his virtues, his teaching abilities, his kindness, his respect. But I think the one thing that really affected me most deeply was when he read scriptures to us. I remember sitting at my desk and watching him. He would just come alive when it was time to read scripture, and his eyes would sparkle. And if it's true that the eyes are the windows to the soul, I saw something very beautiful there. And his words touched me deeply. I knew that from his reading, he knew intimately the author of those words. It was a small thing in a way, one class out of my whole life, but Dr. Quanbeck affected me deeply. And now I have the opportunity to stand behind a desk. Although I teach younger children, I have 8 and 9-year-olds, I hope that in some way I can also touch them the way that he touched me. So I'm very happy today to be able to say thank you to him personally in front of this crowd of witnesses. I would like to thank you for myself and for all of the other students that you must have touched over the years. I'm sure there were lots of them. And so, for all you did for me, this scripture verse is for thee. I bow on my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God.
Words not only about Phil, but the way we sing. We should do another one right now. We will sing what in the good old days was called Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah. The person wrote this as describing the wilderness experience of Israel as an image really of the Christian life. And Quanbeck and I agree unusually that this is the way it should be, is O Thou Great Jehovah. So we'll sing it that way. It's you have it in front of you, no page to get. Go ahead.
Stand. begin extolling the virtues of this man, this friend and colleague that we're honoring here tonight. I puzzled over this for weeks before I finally hit on one event in his life that seemed good. It was when Phil was a young pastor in Bagley, Minnesota. Now here I think we see clearly several of his most outstanding virtues, qualities that made him not only a friend but also one of the stars of the Augsburg faculty. Here's what happened. One day, young Reverend Quanbeck was riding through northern Minnesota countryside, returning from a pastoral conference, and he stopped to pick up a hitchhiker. It was a young French Roman Catholic from Maine who was on his way to San Francisco. Phil was wearing his clerical collar, of course, so the young man said, "Thanks for the ride, Father." But before Phil could correct him, a little bunny rabbit darted out from the bushes along the road and ran smack into the front grille of the car. Bang! And the little critter cartwheeled head over heels until he came to rest in the ditch. Well, Phil stopped immediately, and the two of them got out to see if there was anything that they could do, but it was too late. The poor little thing was lying there, its little legs sticking straight up in the air, its paws bent, its eyes closed, its tongue hanging out. Oh man, that's too bad, the young man said. But Phil went back to his car and returned with a vial of liquid, put his finger into the bottle, then touched the rabbit's nose, then its tummy, then stood back and waited. Slowly, the bunny rabbit began to stir. His eyes opened, his tongue slid back in his mouth, and he rolled over on his feet. Then he got up and hopped away. Hop, hop, hop. Then he turned around and waved at Phil. Hop, 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 wave. Hop, 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 wave. Hop, 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 wave. Until he disappeared into the forest. Wow, what was that stuff? The young man asked. Holy water? No, Phil replied. Hair tonic with a permanent wave. Okay, now for some exegesis. What virtues did Phil show here? Well, hospitality is certainly one, by picking up the young stranger. Compassion is another, by restoring the little bunny rabbit to health again. But perhaps most of all that struck me was his impishness. Now, many women and men of God show hospitality to strangers and compassion for the suffering. And some of them even have a lively sense of humor. But Phil goes further than just humor. He slides levity ever so subtly in the direction of impishness. This is something sometimes that's been seen in his classes. Here Phil can be very serious and can show great reverence before the pages of sacred scripture. Yet listen to the example that I once heard him give to make a point about different kinds of literature that you find in the Bible. You know, one of the things you have to learn if you're to be a good student of the Bible is that it contains many different kinds of literature. Yet what often happens is people forget this, among whom are some very erudite scholars who write biblical theologies. Phil doesn't always think too highly of biblical theologians because they tend to blend everything in the Bible together into nice, neat, general truths and feel that once they've got those, then they can forget about the original text. Well, Phil would say to his students, imagine this picture. Here are a group of animals. Let's say there's a giraffe, a zebra, a horse, a lion, a hippopotamus, and a rhinoceros. Around each of their necks are signs that say history, law, wisdom, prophecy, hymns, apocalyptic. Now watch them as they go and walk into a meat grinder. And they come out the other end all looking the same, and now all of them have the same sign hanging around their necks, and it reads, Biblical Theology. test not being able to explain what biblical theology is and how it can be dangerous. So Phil has always been a master teacher as well as an extraordinary pastor. But I've got to stop with this sort of thing because I feel that I should respect Phil's wishes. He told me recently that he had mixed feelings about this event because the speeches usually sound too much like eulogies at a funeral. Well, I hope I haven't embarrassed him so far with too many accolades. But what I'd like to do now is shift perspectives. Instead of continuing to extol Phil's virtues and accomplishments, all of which, of course, would reveal our deep affection for him, I'd like to look at some of Phil's affections. What are the powers in this world that have attracted Phil's attention and devotion? We might almost say, what are some of the gods that Phil has worshipped in his life? All of us have these, I think. There are centers of energy and vitality that draw us to them and fill us with awe. You know what I'm talking about when I note some of the powers that I've seen Phil giving himself to over the 30 or so years that I've known him. The first is order. The Greeks named this power Apollo and saw in this god at least 4 things. First, they saw the master musician. The skilled archer was second. The third, the great healer. Fourth, the lover of truth. I've seen Phil devoted to all of these Apollonian powers. Phil's love of music is well known to many of us. For decades, he led his church choir and supported musical organizations here at the college and in the Twin Cities. As far as archery is concerned, that reminded me of sports. And I thought I should mention Phil's love for handball and golf. I've been fortunate enough to play both these sports with him for over 30 years now, and I know him to be a fierce competitor. I'm sure now, as he moves into his phased retirement, he'll be worshiping these gods more and more. Phil also has the heart of a great healer. I remember 2 occasions when this gift became clear to me. Once the 2 of us were chaperoning at Augsburg a student body hayride. Those were really a long time ago. And one of the students got seriously ill. Now, it never occurred to me to call immediately for emergency help, but it did to Phil. As it turned out, the woman had suffered a ruptured appendix. And if we hadn't done this, followed Phil's instincts in such matters, I think we would have been very sorry. The second picture I have is of Phil at his mother's funeral, when it became clear how he had taken care of her during the last years of her life and then through her final illness. Here again, he showed the compassion for others that you need to be a great healer. That image always comes to mind when I'm teaching the religions of China and the Confucian principle of reverence for one's elders comes up. Apollo also was the god of truth. And this too has been one of Phil's fascinations over the years. Almost since the very first time I heard him participate in an intellectual discussion, Phil has always been the one to turn in the skeptic's barb. He always points out that we all have our own perspective on the truth, and that we should never be too sure of ourselves. The truth always transcends what we think it is. I sometimes thought he went too far in this skeptical direction, but he was never persuaded that this was a danger. I want to come back to that in just a moment. Along with fascination for order, however, I've seen Phil also fascinated with the power of unbridled energy. Now, he certainly is more Apollonian than Dionysian, but from time to time I've also seen in Phil a love for reckless abandon that we usually associate with the Greek god Dionysius. This might be illustrated in one of Phil's favorite stories, the one about Oli and his children. It seems Oli had gotten very old and feeble, and his children felt uncomfortable about him living alone anymore in his house. So they came to him and suggested, "Dad, we found this very nice nursing home. Why don't you move into it?" Well, Oli immediately shoved the prospect aside and said, "No, leave me alone." Mind your own business. A short while later, the children came back to Ole with another suggestion. Dad, how about you coming to live with us? To which Ole responded, no, leave me alone. Mind your own business. Finally, after several more weeks, the children came with one more offer. Dad, how about if Judy Hansen comes and lives with you? She could take care of you. She's just out of high school and very pretty. This time there was a long silence, after which Ole said, you do what you think is right. So Phil has worshipped the powers which the Greeks named Apollo and Dionysius. When we get down very deep into Phil's soul, I think we find two other powers that have also awakened Phil's awe. The first is something which the Greeks called logos, the word, human speech. As long as I've known him, Phil has been simply fascinated with language. He stands in awe over the mystery of it and savors a sentence well-formed more than almost anyone I know. Fondly, we remember his chapel services, where he would often read a long selection from an author with a gift for words. We've also learned to look forward to his annual recitations at the Augsburg Advent Vespers worship service in December. You can hear in his voice the excitement, the wonder, the fear he feels for the ideas that he's uttering, and the way they have become incarnated in the sounds with which they're clothed. Sometimes, in fact, he seems to be frustrated that he can't get enough emotion, the emotion that he feels, into these words as he reads them. Truly, Phil is a worshiper of language. But there's yet a higher God that Phil worships, and this is the God beyond all name and form, the creative energy that words can't contain. I know that Phil seeks after this God because beyond speech, because of the emotion that he exudes when he reads, about which we were just speaking. But I also know it because of how this energy combines with the skepticism that we mentioned just a moment ago. Students in Phil's classes are often in for a rude awakening when they hear him start about the problem of interpretation. They often confidently come in assuming that their reading of the Bible, which is the one that they've been taught, is the true one. But Phil labors with them, and continuing with those of us who are his colleagues, not to be so glib. We always read in our own presuppositions, he insists, so we always need to be open to correction. We may think we know what God is saying to us, but we always need others in the Christian community to help us make sure. After all, Satan too can quote Scripture. This is to say that in my view, Phil has a deep sense of God's transcendence. It is the one God who appears in all these different guises that we've been talking about tonight as powers. But what is this God in himself? We'll never know until one day we see him face to face, we always think. But even then, I wonder. I can picture it now. Phil has died and gone to heaven. And just as he always suspected, when he gets there, he finds himself ushered to an enormous cathedral. The group he entered with enters the cathedral through some 50-foot high doors. And inside, they are overwhelmed by a ceiling vaulting up almost out of sight. Stained glass windows of the most magnificent variety are everywhere. And a heavenly incense is wafting through the air. Soon their skin begins to tingle, and tears well up in their eyes as the magnificent strains of Bach and Palestrina reach their ears, echoing through the cathedral. Luminous heavenly creatures float through the air above them, streaming banners that read, Gloria in excelsis Deo. And a long carpeted aisle invites them to come from the entrance down to a huge raised dais at the far end of the cathedral. Now, as Phil's group is ushered down this 500-foot long aisle, they begin to see a figure sitting on the dais, fully 10 feet tall, with a long white beard and snow-white hair tumbling down over his gleaming golden robes. His eyes are a spectacular deep blue, yet a laser-like light shines out of them. To either side of him stand countless other creatures, some human, some not, their trumpets and spears forming a pattern that centers in this spectacular enthroned person. As we might expect, every one of the new entrants stands in awestruck silence, except for Phil. Phil takes one look at this magnificent spectacle. He mounts the marble steps, glides right up to the man sitting on the throne and says, "Take me to your leader." So none of us knows what God is in him or herself. All we have to go on is Jesus Christ. In this connection, let me leave you with one final picture that occurred to me. We've turned our attention now from Phil and his virtues, which are many, to the powers that we've seen attracting his attention. As a colleague these 30-some years, I think I've seen him struggle with the logos perhaps more than any of these powers, language and speech. So this is the picture I want to leave you with tonight. I mentioned already how Phil pours emotion into his speaking and writing. It's almost as if he feels frustrated not being able to better express his joy and awe at the great salvation that God has provided for us in Jesus Christ. Well, here's the picture. It's a hymn sing in the Augsburg Chapel. Phil is officiating, as he once did as college chaplain. The hymn he has picked for the congregation to sing is "Oh, for a Thousand Tongues." As the singing begins, he joins his lusty voice in the singing. Then we pan in close and see tears well up in Phil's eyes as he contemplates the great words that he is singing. Oh, for a thousand tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise, the glories of my God and King, the triumphs of his grace. My gracious Master and my God, assist me to proclaim, to spread through all the earth abroad the honors of your name. The name of Jesus charms our fears and bids our sorrows cease, sings music in the sinner's ears, brings life and health and peace. He breaks the power of canceled sin, he sets the prisoner free. His blood can make the foulest clean, his blood avails for me. Phil, we love you.
Presentation from the chairman of the religion department, Dr. Bradley Holt.
As John said a few minutes ago, Phil was rather uneasy about this event. When he saw that we were going to ask you each to pay $12.50, he began to wonder if anyone would come. You have all taken the opportunity to pay that $12.50 to be here and express your gratitude and affection for him. But very soon this evening will be over, and I'm here tonight to ask you to consider making a much longer term investment, and that is to contribute to the scholarship which is in Phil and Dora's name. You will find at the center of your table some gray forms and envelopes, and we invite you either tonight or take it home and think about it, consult your banker, consult your spouse, however you may like, and consider making a generous contribution to students who will be coming to Augsburg in the future. My gift and yours will be a permanent gift. It will continue giving to students for years and years and years to come. So I invite you either to make a contribution tonight or a pledge and seal the envelope and put it near the flagstaff in the middle of your table, or to take it home and to send in your form. And now it's my privilege to present to Phil two of the signs of our affection this evening. namely the letters that many of you have written and addressed to me, and thanks to Shar Hauer, are now nicely put into a book, and also the certificate concerning the scholarship, which has been begun in Phil's name, and we are confident will reach its goals. So Phil, would you come up, please? First, on behalf of about 50 people, I'd like you to have some good reading. And then secondly, I'd like you to hear the catalog statement of the scholarship as it has been set forth. The Philip and Dora Quanbeck Scholarship, awarded annually to an upper division student majoring in religion and/or planning to attend seminary or graduate school, based upon academic achievement and financial need. Preference will be given to a student active in the campus ministry program. Established in 1993 by colleagues, family, and friends, in honor of Dr. Philip, 1950, and Mrs. Dora, 1949, Quanbeck's career of devoted service to the college. Here's a nice document for you.
You want me to introduce you?
It would be helpful if you would tell me what I should say. President Anderson, Charles, my colleagues in the department, John and Jean and Brad and Lynn, as well as others, Dave, our pastor, Dave Wold, there are all sorts of things that come to mind. One of them is oddly the comment that I heard some time ago: most great men are dead and I don't feel too well myself. After words like this, why, you get kind of illusory ideas about yourself. But I would like to begin second. This is a second beginning. It's kind of like Genesis. There are two stories. I'd like to begin by making reference to a couple of texts, one of which is part of the syllabus for biblical studies. Some of you might know it. It's Proverbs 16:29. A gray head is a crown of glory. It is found in the paths of righteousness. It's a text that students are asked to read and memorize. Carol Taylor of the Living Bible knows me, apparently, because he translates, a gray head is a crown of glory. It is almost always found in the paths of righteousness. And another text which comes out of an entirely different context, but it's from Isaiah. When the house of David and Ahaz was, I'm sure you remember this, it's around 700 or so, a little bit before BC, when the house of David was told Syria is in league with Ephraim, his heart and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. That's kind of how I feel. But I recall another story. This is so far the texts. We might come back to them, you never know. But I recall a story of some similar occasion when a person was being feted. And in response to the very favorable introduction and acknowledgement of his work, He responded in the following way. He said, if my mother were here, she would say that it's all true. If my wife were here, she would say, it sounds something like my husband, but I think I would make some changes. If my children were here, they would wonder if the references being made are to the person they know as their father. My wife and our children are all here, and they will undoubtedly sort it through for themselves. I'm very grateful for your presence here today. This is true, as even though, as has already been mentioned, that your presence, the event itself and your presence, as well as the complications of my own psyche, make it difficult to keep from thinking of myself more highly than I ought to think. When my colleagues in the Department of Religion indicated that they would be interested in having a dinner on the occasion of my retirement from full-time teaching, I had this double-sided response. On the one hand, I was attracted to it, and the other hand, as you've already heard, I felt considerable unease and discomfort. So tonight I find myself in agreement with President Anderson's eloquent observations of last Sunday. He said it so well. But I thank you for coming, and I thank you, Roberta, and Jan, and John, for your gracious words. Human life, whatever else it is never an individual enterprise. It's an enterprise entered into and continued with lots of other people. So I want to express again my thanks to my colleagues, but especially to my family. You've met them all tonight. Dora and I are just incredibly proud of them. And we're grateful to God for them. I want to thank them, but I want especially to thank Dora for her continued support and encouragement, her love, and her endurance. I was just thinking about it again, and when I thought about my first sabbatical, it was in 1967. Our oldest son, Philip, and I went to Cambridge, England. We went about March 1st. We rented a flat, and we cooked for ourselves. We bought greens, and our motto was, if in doubt, boil them. I listened to lectures at the Divinity faculty. Philip went to the Cambridgeshire School for Boys, and Dora was at home with our 3 other children, 12, 10, and 8, teaching 2 days a week in the Minneapolis public schools so that Philip and I could be in Cambridge. And then there was our regular practice of at least once a semester inviting the students in our classes to come out to the house. Of course, not all of them could come, but we invited. We didn't do this for weekend college, but we did it for others, and for one night. And Dora always prepared something, but that's just an indication of her support and help in this mutual enterprise of teaching at Augsburg. And I want to make a couple of other things. I want to say thanks to Charles Anderson and to Kate for their past and continuing friendship, a friendship which began long before he came to Augsburg, and I hope will continue long after we both have left. And I think that in his case, that will be some time yet. And then I want to thank Oscar Anderson, my friend and my boss for 17 years. I want to express also to Bernard Christensen, who isn't here, who, as all of you, or most of you know, has died. And his wife is not here. But I want to say that I'm very grateful to him, because when I was on a leave of absence from my parish in Bagley, Minnesota, and studying at Princeton Seminary, I got this letter from Bernard Christensen asking if I would come and continue my work and then come back and teach at Augsburg. So I'm grateful to him and the risk that he took in making that invitation. I want to acknowledge my indebtedness to him, to John Stensvog, and to Gracia Christensen. There are as well tonight one brother, 3 sisters-in-law who are here, as well as other close, well, more than that, more sisters-in-law than I can count. No, I can really make it. But Muriel and one sister, a brother, several sisters, I think I'll use that indefinite number. Several sisters-in-law who have been gracious enough to come, as well as many other members of the family. I'm sure that it's unlikely that there has been any formal organizing principle to my teaching over the 36 years that I've been at Augsburg. And I'm reasonably confident that I speak differently today from the way that I spoke when I first began to teach. But if I could go back, redo, reorganize, represent, I would like the focus of my teaching to have been on the power of language to shape our world, our perception of it, and our place in it. I think, of course, especially of the power of the language of the Bible. And there was no communication between John Benson and myself. I was just amazed when I listened to John and his comments. In more recent years, my delight and joy in the ways the biblical writers tell the stories they have to tell have increased. I've grown in my appreciation of the vitality of the language, the wonder of the poetry, the richness of the imagery, and the wealth of literary forms in the Bible. And I would like to have done much more than I have done. Somehow I think it not to have been accidental, a slip of the tongue, that the writer of the Gospel of John began, "In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and God was the Word. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." The power of that word to revision and reshape our lives is simply immense. Thank you very much.
Well, to conclude very quickly, because anything after that would be anticlimactic, and secondly, you're all invited to the hymn sing at the chapel. Phil, your work here and what's been going on this evening has reminded me of a comment you made to me several years ago. You may have forgotten it, And I think you stole it from someplace else because I've heard it in other contexts, but it's a fine one. You can apply it to any organization. You told me doing a good deed at Augsburg is like wetting yourself in a dark suit. You get a warm feeling, but no one notices. I want to conclude this evening by telling you that you have done good things for us. And all these people who are gathered here tonight are evidence that what you have done has been noticed and has been and is deeply appreciated. And as I think Brad referenced earlier, you get this number of people who are willing to pay. It is an indication of something very significant. You can always raise a crowd when it's free. We did that last Sunday, but this is special. You have done, continue to do good things for all of us, for the church, the Lord of the church, and these good things are noticed, they are rejoiced in, and pray God they are emulated. The good news for the evening, for a conclusion, is that you have decided to continue to do some part-time teaching. And I assume that when that time is concluded, you will be like many of your colleagues who have retired in the past and are sprinkled all over this audience. People do not simply disappear. They continue to be in the orbit of the college, and that is a marvelous thing. I was going to try to name them, but I knew I'd miss someone and be in trouble for some time, but you know who they are. Greet them as you leave. Your decision to stay on teaching means that we will not be deprived of your knowledge, your presence, your wisdom, nor, and this is lesser, but also very important, your presence on the court. You don't realize, really, the pleasure it is when we draw each other as partners, and occasionally we old-timers beat the youngsters, like Benson and Holt. Now, using the word youngsters to refer to people who are 61 and 51 respectively, either is indication that the language has lost all its meaning, or simply that it is an indication of how immensely we enjoy each other in that context, and we will continue to do so. The only problem is that when you decide to fully retire, after now some part-time teaching, you will probably need another party, and we'll face that later. I told Steve Gabrielson I would remind you all of the hymn sing in the chapel. I know you want to greet Phil and Dora and the family, but if you wander over there, you will find that experience to be a nice climax to this evening. Thank you all for coming.
Can I hold Amy?
She has to say something to Grandpa.
If we remember, we ought to sign our guest.
You know that Richard Nelson.
Yes, thank you.
Because we always like to say, when you get rich and famous, you can say, well, he was right here. He said, I hope I'm rich. He said, I should do that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, great, great. You know, there's a line in Nehemiah 8 about when Ezra read the law to the people. Then there were others who went about among the listeners and told them how to understand what he was saying. Thank you. Thanks. That's very good. I'm trying to learn something now. Thank you. Are you? Okay. Good for you. Yeah, good, good. Good. Thanks for being here tonight. Yes, we're going to be up there some. You know, we're going to be down in Cedar Rapids because Julie's giving birth. We expect sometime in late 2021 is the date, but she's fully pregnant. You better go home. That's what no. What a fellow we had here years ago.
Yeah, I didn't get the point.
I didn't even pay attention. Thanks. Can I give you a hug?
Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for coming. Beth, thanks for coming. Can I give you a hug? Thanks for coming. And it's so nice that things worked out so you could get a sister. Yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah. Billy, can I give you a hug? Oh, thanks. Thanks for making this party such a nice one. No, you, the people did it. If you hadn't done it, it wouldn't have been. It couldn't have worked.
Be reunited. Thank you so much.
Doing what you did. You did some. Look at that.
It's
here.
Yeah, Dora, congratulations. Thanks for a great evening.
You met Mary.
Oh, sure.
Yes. Now you're in a school district? What's
I mean, our state park, then it's white.
Oh, the singing was so good.
Marvelous. Oh.
Wow.
Too bad we didn't get some more of it.
How about that?
Hi. Can you say something for the camera? This is for your grandpa and grandma. You want to say hi, grandpa and grandma? Can you hold that up, Phil?
Do you see that it spells out Phil? You see that?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that was Phil Thompson's idea, you know. And you caught the theme of all the holes here.
Yeah.
It was working. You know, the plan was we'd have 18 holes, and then the 19th would be where you sat.
Yeah.
And then the crowd just kept building and building and building. So we had 37 holes.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well,
it was great.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoa!
These are the after dinner speeches. The after dinner speeches.
Just talk about what you like about your grandpa. But don't get Just don't get so close because you can't hear your words. Just say, I like my grandpa because.
I like my grandpa because he's sweet, kind, and loving.
Okay.
I love you.
What else? Tell me more about your grandpa. No. What do you like to do with your grandpa?
I like to go and step to my grandpa.
She likes to what?
She likes to go on
Not too close, honey. Because that doesn't work. It only works if you're this far away.
To fish? Is that to fish? Oh.
I like to go to the cabin with my grandpa.
If you're very gentle, you can bring it down to her, okay? But Becca has to hold it, or Sarah. But it has to be this far away.
Okay, can you do that? Yeah. Outfit are fun. You can't put them all to it. Outfits are fun, but going to the zoo is more fun, but not there. It's all fun. Let me try. And that's how for things.
Sarah, I can't understand it. You have to hold it this far away.
How about doing trouble without another?
Things that the grandchildren of Philip Quanbeck like about him. Thank you for listening, Sarah.
Hey, Kitty, can you hear? No, don't put it to your mouth. No, I want to hold it.
Did Maren get to say anything?
Yeah, she's saying.
You know what?
I'm